Today we're joined with Don Phin out of San Diego, California. Don, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Francesco. I'm looking forward to this, and I've been wanting to do it for some time now.
Thank you. Glad to have you on the show. Can you share with the audience a little bit about your background? Because you have an interesting background around a trial lawyer, you did some fishing on a boat, and now you're coaching and facilitating CEOs across North America. So maybe share a little about a background with the audience so they get to know you.
So the first thing you'll probably notice is that New York accent. So I grew up inner city Bronx, raised by my mom and raised me and my two younger sisters. And coming out of that environment, in order to be the family hero, you become my son the lawyer and my son the doctor. And I know there's a lot of our first generation family members that came out of similar circumstances to me. And they're really trying to get themselves out of poverty, out of limited financial circumstances. So for me, a lawyer is a way to do that. And I came out here when I was 20, first to work on a tuna boat, then finished up college and law school here. And I started a business litigation and employment litigation practice. And so I did that for 17 years and then realized nobody really wins a lawsuit, especially not the lawyers. When you work 70 hours a week, you end up divorced the way I did. A lot of lawyers get burnt out, wouldn't want their kids to be lawyers. So it's a tough gig. And at 40, I said no more, and I quit. So then what happened, I ended up building an HR company because I could see how to prevent problems. I've always been a creative front-end thinker, and I could see how we could prevent problems. I had 3,500 companies using that. I ran it for 12 years, managed my employees and things like that, and sold it to my larger competitor. Now, after I quit litigation, I also started speaking to the Vistage, VISTAGE CEO group. I get roughly 15 CEOs for half a day, and we talk about how we manage personnel and how we show up as leaders. So it's a fun conversation for me to have them. I get great grades, and probably 70% of my work has come from those executives. And so that's where I am. And I really enjoy the public speaking, and I really enjoy the coaching. I've been through a lot of coach training, and now I'm enjoying going through coach training with you as well.
So all that time spent in the courtroom, right? What did you learn? You talk about the stories and the facts. Like, what did you learn in the courtroom as a litigator?
First of all, it's an amazing stage. It's the only part of being a lawyer I liked was being in trial. I mean, there's a reason why it's in movies and stuff, because there's a lot of dynamic, a lot of moving parts, and it's a great
It's
drama.
gotta be cool. You're there orating away, right? It's gonna be amazing.
I object, right? So it's a fun drama to be in, but you only do that as a trial lawyer maybe 1/10 of your time. The rest of the time you're just dealing with lawyers, which is horrible. Okay, so I never lost a case they took to trial. At the end, I was doing some crazy cases, representing nuclear power plant whistleblowers. That's when my life became a John Grisham novel. But what I realized is that I would put six figures in people's pockets all the time, and almost to the person, maybe an engineer exception, they were broke within 3 years. And you have to step back from that and say, okay, I work 70 hours a week. I killed my first marriage in the process. And the net result is 3 years later, I get you money that 3 years later you lose. What's the point of doing this anymore? That's when I quit. I hit 40 and I said, no more of this nonsense. And then I started getting to the front end of problems and really pounding myself, moving to the front end. And I built an HR company. I had 3,500 companies using it. I managed those, my employees and everything like a lot of the owners here do, and ran that for 12 years. And I sold it to my larger competitor. When I started that business, I also started speaking to the Vistage CEO group. Now, this is like a YPO, any of those types of groups. It's a network where you get roughly 15 CEOs for a half a day. And they bring me in as a speaker, and I'm one of their top speakers. And I talk either about managing personnel or how we show up as leaders. Okay, so those are two things they have me do. And I've helped those companies so many different ways. One thing is a lot of them are family businesses. So I get brought in to deal with nasty stuff because of my legal background and my HR background and knowing how to deal with the emotional landscape. And so I get brought in, they bring in some nasty stuff to help them work through. And I've really enjoyed working with the family businesses doing that.
So, you have an interesting background. You're obviously passionate about what you do. You're a student of yourself. You're constantly learning about you and why you do what you do. Why did you choose to come and join Veritage and go through the facilitator training? Like, why us?
First of all, I think I originally came across one of your podcasts or blog sites, and so I was very enamored with the writing and your concept of safe space and reading that book. And I'm like, I got to reach out to this guy because it's a lot of what I preach. We use different languaging, but it's the same message from us. And I was very attached to it. And so we started chatting and understanding the work that you did. And I said, this sounds pretty fascinating. I think I'd be pretty good at this given my background as a lawyer, my background on dealing with family dysfunction, and my background as coaching. And plus, I'm pretty creative about things. So I thought that would be a really great opportunity for me. And when I got to meet you and went through the training with you in Athens, that was just a special experience and a personal growth experience for me.
So, what did you learn about yourself as a result of the training in Athens? And then, you're currently going through one of our coaching modules that we take clients through. What are you learning about yourself as an individual, as a human being?
The first thing I learned is that the method that you do with families really goes down below the surface. And a lot of the stuff that I see from advisors, they don't want to get down into the emotional weeds because that's sticky stuff. That's not something they're used to dealing with. They're not trained on that. They can stay up here and deal with finances and put together plans and all that kind of stuff. But don't ask them because this is a dangerous zone down here, right? And you've got to be equipped to handle that, right? So the first thing I saw is that the process for getting down there was very appealing to me. I absolutely alignment with the whole concept of stories and the roles that we play and the masks that we wear and how we show up. So I saw a lot of alignment in how that program was put together. And now that I'm literally going through it with a one-on-one basis with you, my own self-realization, for lack of a better word, is getting improved. So we both know it's hard for me to keep my energy down. I am one wound up guy sometimes, okay? And the fun part about it is going through this program has helped me to calm down even more. It's a journey I've been on, but it's helping me even better than I've done before. It's helped me to be more present because somebody like me can, deal with what regret do I have in the past? How can I couldn't have fixed that? I fixed everything else. I couldn't fix my own family stuff, and fear about what's going to be the future and not being right here, right now, where the present lies. And sometimes, look, I've read my books on that. I've meditated, but you need reminders. You need reminders. It's like, Don, wake up. Like, thank you. And the other thing is, when you're a skinny kid growing up in the Bronx, I was always in the smart classes. And so what I was different, and I was smart and I was verbal. That's what a lot of my buddies weren't. So that's how I survived. And that's how I survived being a lawyer. So what do I become? I become a trial lawyer. What do I become? A speaker, And then I start doing the coaching. And the coaching has been such a personal transformation for me because instead of advising and telling, I have to listen and engage and encourage, and in my languaging, let them be the hero in the conversation. I'm not a trial lawyer anymore. I'm not being the hero out there. I'm not the gladiator. I'm there helping them to become their own hero.
I think that's a great message for family members that are listening here, particularly if you're a founder, right? It's allow your children, allow the next generation to become the heroes of their lives. You're there to provide support and guidance and to listen and to ask the questions and really permit them, honor them in their journey.
Look, how many people?
So how are you doing that?
Francesco, how many people in your life? You've got. I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
No. So you've got children, right? How are you doing that as a father with your kids?
I've got really good relationships. I have 3 sons, big guys, and I've had really good relationships with them, and through 2 divorces. Okay, so they've realized that we weren't a match. They realized I was still a decent person. I've always been good with them. They're all very successful. I've learned that if you give them a good foundation, then you have to let them go. You have to let them mature. Too many parents want to control, and that kid never matures. So I think my sons are able to mature more than a lot of their classmates. It's that father
You
receipt thing,
talk about,
you
not
don't want to squish the bird, right? But you don't want it to fly away. Sooner or later, you got to go like this.
you talk about, not allowing, the children to mature. That's one of the things that we see in families of wealth, right? Because, the parent um, creates the wealth because they don't want the family to suffer. And then they end up having a lot of wealth, and that lack of suffering sort of continues, and they take away the children's drive, right? And we create entitlement, we create trust fund babies, right? Because the child's life has been made too easy, too simple, right?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about how do you assist families to get through that, to realize that, sometimes we've got to let the children suffer a little bit. They don't have to break their legs, but let them scratch them a little bit. What are your thoughts about that? How would you assist a parent to overcome that?
The first thing I will acknowledge is that in families of wealth, when people make mistakes, they can be big mistakes. Okay? When somebody acts with bad behavior, it can have a much bigger ripple effect than my family with my two younger sisters and nobody else, right? You've got these sometimes big networks in these families. One person can throw the whole family under the bus, right? So it's a different playground in a sense, right? And being very aware and sensitive to that just by its very nature. One of the things I try to encourage people to do is to find the good in each other. When people are running hard and they're feeling stressed, what stops us is something that annoys us, right? Somebody didn't live up to my expectation of them, okay? So, and if that's, and when you're business executives, it's a challenge with all the executives I know. They're controlling by nature, and they're not very present or listen because they have so much more important stuff to do. So they end up becoming disconnected, all right? And they can disconnected at work or at home, but they end up becoming disconnected, all right? And I love the saying that if you don't listen, you'll be surrounded by people who have nothing to say, right? And that's what ends up happening to a lot of them. They're the last one to know the truth in their world because they haven't listened. Instead of thinking, why should I bother telling him or her, right? And I see that they cause themselves to be insulated out. So I never wanted to have that happen with my boys. I had to be transparent. I had to realize they're going to make mistakes. They're going to screw up. I did. I'm sure their kids will. And they've got to be turned into learning lessons, and be careful about not letting the punishment meet the crime,
Why do you think parents don't take the time, or maybe don't know how to, create opportunities as learning lessons versus just letting it slide and just leaving the status quo? Like if you think so think of it as a lawyer and also as a father. Why do you think parents do this?
Because they find it hard to have what I call above the line conversation where each party talks about their responsibilities. Okay. So there's a lot of finger pointing. And as soon as you're critical of anybody, they go into defensive mode and they will blame or justify the circumstances, and there's no power, as I call, below the line. And getting people to own their responsibility, not you imposing it on them, getting them to own it is half the trick. I'm working in a group right now called Boys to Men, and these are boys without fathers and at-risk moms, and they haven't had this conversation. You see what happens to people who aren't put in some type of nurturing environment that allows them to grow. We talk about culture in organizations. Look, when you and I are a kid, culture was what you put in a petri dish. It was a growth mechanism. That's still what it is, okay? It's a family, where the family culture is a family growth mechanism. What are you going to grow in this culture, right? Do you expect to grow anything in that, really? So the family culture means so much. And of course, a lot of that is the family business, family culture are like this. They're hand in glove.
So how does one go about, in your opinion and your expertise and your wisdom, how does one go about uncovering their own personal culture? How do I start to look at my own little petri dish and go, gee, what's going on in there? Am I growing bacteria or am I growing food?
No, your self-talk is the most important conversation you'll ever have, by far. And whether you call, I was watching Phil Stutz's movie the other night on Netflix, which is amazing. He calls the judge the X. You know, the X is always there, you know, where you beat yourself up, where you say, shit, I could have done better, where you might have some guilt, regret, or remorse, you know, where things that you can't undo, you know, as we lawyers say, you can't unring a bell, right? So, you know, that whole challenge of not letting your past drag you down through your present and your future is a big challenge. And a lot of people don't want to drum that stuff up. It's uncomfortable. They're not equipped to handle those conversations. So they'd rather just ignore the conversation. Hopefully it'll go away. When does that really happen, right? It just festers at that point. And it limits people being, for lack of a better word, whole with each other. I want to be whole with my family members. I want to be whole with people. I don't have to think I have to cordon myself off with who I'm dealing. I can't be a whole person with them. And you want to allow people to be a whole person with you, and that requires a lot of acceptance. You know, that's a real challenge for people to see the way people should be, and yet being accepting of how they may not live up to your expectations.
You know, interesting you talk about expectations, right? So, you know, people don't think about that. They have unrealistic expectations on people because they haven't clearly communicated what they want from them, right? So, see, the analogy that we use is, you know, think of it as you're a director of a play, right? And you've got some uncommunicated desires about someone. So, for example, you know, if I'm going to be a director of a play, and Don, you're my lead actor, right? And you know, the role I want to assign you is, I'm just going to make stuff up here, is a 4'11", you know, Filipino lady, right, who is a ballerina, but in fact, you know, you're what, 6'7", 6'8",
Me?
basketball, volleyball player.
No, I'm
So,
6'3".
right,
My
yeah,
son's a 6'7", but not
okay.
me.
Okay. Well, you look
He does
6'8"
help
to
with
me because I'm
volleyball.
5'4". So you know, so when you are, you know, being Don, the volleyball player, not being my Filipino ballerina, I've got an uncommunicated expectation that's in place, and then I move to resentments, and then I move to judgments, and I punish. Right. So I think what has to happen, in my opinion, is it's about clearly expressing what our intentions are, what we would like something to look like, and being clear about it. Then there's no miscommunications. Because, you know, as you said, in the court of law, there is one set of facts and a whole bunch of stories.
I'll give two examples about that. Somebody says, I want to take the family on a perfect vacation. In their brain, they've got a mind map of they're on a beach or they're skiing or they're walking the streets of Paris. They've already got an image built up when they use the word perfection. And they're somehow assuming everybody else at the table has that same image in their head. And so I kidded around. I said to the CEO, so we're all going to perfection together. Where did you come up with the hit? Somebody's in Kauai, another one's in the Alps, another one's staying home. You know, it's hilarious. And the point is, my mind map is not your mind map. So if you're thinking in thoughts and images, and you think other people have the same thoughts and images as you, good luck. Okay, as they say, the map is not the territory, right? Now, the other side of it, and it took me till I was in my early 40s to realize this, and I'm a lawyer, is that when I'm upset with somebody, it's because they didn't live up to my expectations of them. And then I realized,
Right.
but did I have an agreement with them? So if we just have expectations of people and don't have agreements with people, we'll be sorely upset. You know, it's a trap. So, and when things don't go right, I'll ask them, were you living in expectations?
So this is important, listeners. You know, Don, you just nailed it here, right? Because in the family business space, right, the founder has an expectation of what the next gen should be like, and the next gen have an expectation of what the founder should be like, and what succession looks like, what retirement looks like. They've already got that picture in their mind, right? And they haven't clearly communicated.
It's almost like seeing
You
two
know, one's in the
cartoons.
Alps,
It's
one's
like
in
seeing two,
the Mara.
it's like two cartoons with the little bubbles up at top, and they're not having any place close to the same conversation. What they're thinking about them, what they're thinking about them, is not the same thing coming out of anybody's mouth. You know.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're coming to the top of the show, Don. So great conversation. We've weaved a whole bunch of different topics and themes. You know, based on your experience, you know, A, as a trial lawyer, right? You know, B, as a successful father with your boys, and, you know, as a speaker and coach to Vistage CEOs, what's one piece of advice you could offer the audience from a next gen perspective and a founder perspective?
I think, and I agree with a lot of the presenters that have been asked, that's the same answer for both. The number one is to listen, okay? And to allow, as you call, a safe place for it, as I call playing 40-40, where we create a place for dialogue so we can actually listen to each other, okay? And look, people need listening training. I train these CEOs we go through listening exercises. I had to learn how to listen better, and I'm always trying to learn how to listen better. So it's something that's very few people are naturally gifted with. A lot of us have to learn our way there, and we can learn to be good listeners. If we want to, we can learn to be good listeners. Simple enough. And the other thing I find is a master of encouragement is somebody who focuses on the good in other people, makes them feel good about themselves. How many people in your life have been masters of encouragement to you? And most of us, if you got them on more than one hand, you are blessed. And you know that those masters of encouragement in your life, you will do anything for. They are so rare. All right. The person who's not trying to put you into their story, a person who's not trying to control you, a person who sees you for who you are and is a true master of encouragement, you'll do anything for those people. So be a master of encouragement.
Great advice. Great advice, Don. So Don, if people wanted to find you and reach out to you, how would they find you?
Well, my website is donphin.com, DONPHIN.com. I've got a bunch of free books on there. My 40-40 book, we didn't get to talk about today, but maybe another time is on there you can download, and a lot of other tools for help managing the workplace and for leadership. I think you'll find it very fruitful.
Well, Don, thank you so much for the conversation. It's been really enlightening, delightful, fun, and playful.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
And for
Take
the
care,
audience, for the audience, as you know, our guests volunteer their time, their wisdom, and their energy to the show for you, because we all recognize that being part of a next gen or part of a family business sometimes can be emotionally lonely. Like, who do you talk about? The things you're going through, what's going through your mind. So the purpose of the show is to sort of create that sort of community. And the other thing is, be generous. Share the show with those that you are part of, that matter to you, that you care about. And finally, if there's something that Don or I said that spoke to you, drop us a note. Let us know what you liked, what triggered you, what can we do to improve. We love feedback. Don, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. Take care.